So Love and Monsters was finally released on Netflix this week. It has an interesting concept, some fun characters and a heck of a lot of monsters, but is it any good? Hey there guys, and welcome back to Dino Reviews. So this week I got to sit down and watch Love and Monsters, the new release from Netflix. 7 years after a monster apocalypse, Joel Dawson, along with the rest of humanity, has been living underground ever since giant creatures took control of the planet. Now, after reconnecting with an old girlfriend over the radio, Joel makes a decision to actually go to her and travel 80 miles over 7 days to get to her kind of coastal colony. Now, of course, this lends itself to a lot of monster mayhem and some really fun action sequences. With this review, I'm going to go through my positives and my negatives with this movie, but overall I had a blast with the film. It's actually a lot of fun and there's a lot of positives to it. First of all, the movie is very funny. Now, it has great comedic timing, but I do think a lot of that is down to Dylan O'Brien and his character in particular. He's this kind of awkward, strange character that constantly finds himself in really horrible situations. As well as that, the movie is quite emotional. The character Joel goes on this huge emotional journey where really he doesn't know how to survive out in the monster apocalypse, and the people he meets throughout the way are actually the ones who show him what to do and how to survive this world. I absolutely love the characters in this one. We meet so many different characters as Joel makes this journey throughout the world, and each of them show him how to survive in a different way, but they also lend quite a lot to the overall film. There is just something great about the connections he makes, whether it be with a human or a robot called Mavis. Everything just gels together. The movie, it tends to remind me of a lot of different genres. At times I thought I was watching Homeward Bound with a mix of E.T. and a mix of Godzilla vs. Kong. A lot is happening in the movie, but also another brilliant positive are the practical effects. The big monsters in particular, although some scenes are a little bit of CGI, mainly it is practical effects and it works extremely well. It's just quite refreshing to see practical effects on screen today because we just don't get it a lot with today's modern movies. There's a scene towards the end of the movie where they actually fight this giant crab. Now, I kept expecting them to throw in some form of CGI, but they don't. They pretty much stick to their guns and do it all practical. And there is just something practical, particularly with creatures, that make them feel a lot more lifelike. As for the cast, Dylan O'Brien does a great job in the movie. As I said already, there is something likeable and relatable about him. Now, at the same time, he does constantly make decisions in the movie that you just really question. You don't know why he's making these absolutely absurd and silly decisions. But that's where the supporting cast comes in. Now, my favourite character, as for the supporting cast, is a dog he befriends along the way called Boy. That just added something extra to the movie that I didn't really think we were going to get. Just this kind of journey they're both going on together and a story that develops between them. Michael Rooker also makes an appearance in the movie as a character called Clyde. Now, anything that he is in, I absolutely love, and it's the same here. He's absolutely golden in the movie. So he kind of helps Joel survive out in the wild. He shows him really which monsters he can tackle, how to get away from other monsters, and he has a little girl as a companion with him who's just as tough. These two characters I loved from the minute they were introduced. Now, we don't spend a huge amount of time with them, but the time that they have in the movie, they actually leave a huge impact. We also get a robot named Mavis that just kind of slows the movie down slightly, but in the right places. We kind of go through again a little bit of character development with Joel, and it works. What I like about this movie, although there's a ton of action, they still find time to slow down and just give us character development. Joel also has a few issues going into the monster apocalypse. So when it all happened, he had this horrible experience with his parents, and it's kind of shook him ever since. So he's not really one that people look at as a hunter or somebody to go out and actually battle the monsters. He tends to freeze in those situations, and instead his colony sees him as someone really to just bring comedic relief and do the cooking. So I enjoyed that they actually set him up in that way. He wasn't this kind of action type hero. He instead had to go out, he had to learn and fend for himself out in this monster apocalypse and really try to get better at surviving in this world. The movie also has a great soundtrack, and what I liked about it is it has a mix of different genres, so a different lot of songs throughout the entire film, and it never feels forced. Every song fits naturally into what's happening at that point of the story. Speaking of the story, I absolutely love the world they built in this one, just the creatures that we got to see on screen. So giant frogs, giant insects, giant crabs. There was a lot going on in the movie, and honestly it just lends itself to more sequels. Now the movie does still have some negatives. Overall I enjoyed it, but there are a few parts that felt a little weaker, particularly the last act of the movie. So most of the story kind of revolves around Joel and his journey through this monster apocalypse. There's a lot going on, and then when he does kind of finally get to this coastal colony, things take a different turn. So we're introduced to this new big bad. There is a kind of separate story going on that just doesn't really connect completely to his story. I just thought that kind of slowed the movie down. I wasn't really interested in the villain at the end of the movie, and it just felt at times like a separate film. As well as that, as I said, Joel's decisions can be a bit questionable at times, and the plot, although I enjoy the world they build, the plot is a bit paper thin. But all in all, that is my only negatives with the movie. I actually had a blast with this one. The comedic timing was perfect. I absolutely loved the characters. I thought they were quite relatable, and the emotional journey Joel goes on is a big plus. As for the monsters, the practical effects were just a big surprise for me. I wasn't expecting it, and the amount of action this movie has is insane. Honestly guys, if you haven't checked it out, Love and Monsters has just released on Netflix this week. I highly recommend you go check it out. Now if you want to see more videos like this one guys, remember of course you can always subscribe to the channel. If you can, make sure guys you give the video a big thumbs up, and I will see you in the next one.